All right, the recording has been started. So, a quick recap of what we did last week. So, okay, I'm not able to find that list. Give me 1 second. Let me just check if I have it in the phone.
Last time it was regarding the need of network security.
Yeah, so we did discuss quite a few things. We discussed what's the need of network security? Uh, why do we need uh, network security as a whole? We did discuss what data sensitivity actually means and what's the need of protection of data. Uh, Quite a few relevant examples. For example, if there's a one big firm which is sort of, uh, I mean, its line of activity is to manufacture the high quality tires. They sort of research, document this stuff, and it's an effort, and they sort of want to protect that particular data so that the other competitors in the market might not exceed them. And that's why the key role comes that you need to protect that so that nobody can steal it from you and then sort of put it for the bidding in the market and then sell it to someone. And then, yeah, if someone just takes it, they will just move ahead of you. Okay, so we had discussed also how we sort of try to fit this void of uh, network security with the help of packet filters or IP tables, right? And then we also discussed the concept of stateless and stateful firewalls. Uh, we did discuss what a session means, what a state of a particular session means, and the concept of five tuples, stateless and stateful in, firewalls. Uh, and after that, we discussed what is signature-based detection and what is behavioral-based detection, and how it actually plays a key role uh, in today's world. And after that, we discussed URL filtering. What is the purpose of URL filtering and how it actually works, and role of signature databases in the firewalls and threat intelligence centers. And from FortiGate point of view, it's called FortiGate distribution network. And then we discussed what is the explanation of NGFW. If you say that I have a firewall and it's an NGFW firewall, there was a very fine line that we tried to draw last time, uh, where we say that okay, if you have every quality, but you don't possess one quality, that you cannot be an NGFW. Can someone help me with that line? So what is an NGFW firewall? Yeah, because am I audible? Hello? Yes,
Sorry, I
sir.
was speaking on mute.
Yeah, Samit. So what's an NGFW firewall?
So we can say that it's a modern type of firewall which have features like which does the deep packet inspection, application awareness, and IPS, SSL TLS inspections, user ID, threat intelligence.
Hmm.
So I guess these are the features which next generation firewall have.
Correct. Yeah. Anyone else? All right, let me quickly share my screen. I'll just try to explain this once again so that we have a complete idea of what it basically means, and then I guess I should share my whole screen. Okay, so last time we discussed that if I have this firewall, right? Let's say that this is FortiGate firewall. It would be stateful firewall, and not just this. Uh, it's going to have, I mean, it's going to help you with signature-based detection for sure, right? Detection, and then you can say that I have a sandbox integrated. So behavioral based detection is also there, right? You're for sure able to do SSL deep packet inspection, yeah,
Yes.
and you're able to do URL filtering. Every other feature that you have on the firewall, you'll be able to do that.
Yes.
But one punchline that was that it always will be in a real-time communication
Yeah.
with its corresponding vendor. So I mean, it has a cloud database, right? The general term for that is threat intelligence center. And what's the purpose of that intelligence center is that it's going to feed this particular firewall on scheduled basis. It's going to feed it with the IPS DB, the app control DB, right?
Yeah.
It's also going to take care of its URL filtering queries, where we're going to see that what that basically means. So every time there's a user here who is trying to access facebook.com, or maybe uh, he's trying to maybe sort of take part in an online casino, right? Which is a gambling site that people should not do that, right? Firewall takes that particular website, goes to this particular threat intelligence center and tells it that, okay, there is someone who's trying to access casino.com. How can we basically stop him? So tell me the rating of this particular casino.com, and if it's good, I allow him. If it's bad, then I stop him, right? So URL live queries are being taken care by this threat intelligence center. So the real-time monitoring with some threat intelligence center is the whole point here,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
How it actually happens in the background, we're going to discuss that today in detail. Now, coming to the today's topics, what I'm going to do is, again, today we're going to see the GUI of the firewall, but before we do that, uh, some of the theoretical terms that I actually want to explain. So it's a firewall over here, right? It's a box. Yeah. Now the question is, this box sometimes can be hardware and sometimes it's a VM. It's a virtual machine,
Yes.
right? So what that basically means is if you're just ordering, someone is ordering FortiGate firewall for their company, right? Or maybe a customer is just ordering FortiGate firewall for their office, right? They can either get it in the form of hardware, they can either get it in the form of VM, right? Now, again, it's a very uh, relevant discussion that where we're going to use the VM and where we're going to use the hardware, right? Important thing here is that when you talk about the hardwares, right? I'll put the VM in another column. So in the hardwares, the thing here is, let me just try to move it here so that this becomes visible. Okay. So in the hardware, you have multiple modules working in collaboration to sort of provide you the functionality of the whole firewall. For example, this box would contain some of the dedicated integrated circuits, right? Integrated circuits basically mean ICs, right? So these integrated circuits sort of work in collaboration to provide you the what? To provide the functionality of the firewall, right? Now, if I talk about the core architecture of this firewall or core architecture of any of the networking device, you talk about the core architecture of any of the uh, device which is taking part in the network or data communication. There are four things generally. You would have a CPU, right? You would have memory, right?
Mhm.
You'll be having the input output and what else? You have the storage. You call it SSD or maybe hard drive, hard disk. Enough? Generally, we have four things. So this is going to take input, this particular module, right? It forwards it to CPU. CPU does the calculation, right? And while it's doing the calculation, all the results will be stored. So this is the memory is the working table of this particular firewall now, right? Whatever I'm working with, I'm going to put all that stuff on this memory. This is RAM, by the way. You call it memory or RAM, right? And then which are the stuff that I don't need, or you might have the concept of paging, not actually going to that those details. You put that in the hard disk if you need it for later, right? Now, if you're talking about this particular device here, the CPU is the one which is actually doing the calculation, right? In the modern context, what we did was we said that, okay, I got some more independent modules, right? Bringing those independent modules one by one, and then incorporating them here, including them here, integrated them within this particular box, right? So that they can help at some point this CPU, right? So I am sort of taking the burden from the CPU. And how do I do that? I'm basically bringing in some more modules, right? If I am talking from the firewall point of view, I know that it's the CPU which is going to do the networking for this because we discussed last time that firewall is a full blown router first and then a firewall,
Right.
right? So it's going to take care of your networking, and then you say that okay, you're a firewall, so you have to do the firewalling. And when you say firewall, you have to sort of restrict the IP traffic based on whatever the statements that I have written out there in the policies, whether it's action or deny, or sorry, whether the action is allow or deny. And then not just this, you also have to take care of the UTM part. Right? By the way, UTM is also one module here. We're going to discuss how we sort of try to build this firewall and said that, okay, this is the complete functionality now, right? Now that I'm bringing some other modules here, I say that I don't want CPU alone to do all of this stuff. If it's networking, if it's the content inspection, let it not do all these things on its own. Let me bring in some more modules, some more hardware, right? This is hardware so that I can accelerate the performance, right? And when I'm doing that, this whole concept is basically called, it's a general term, by the way, right? It's generalized as hardware acceleration, right? So I'm bringing in some independent modules here in this particular unit so that they can help me or they can help the CPU to accelerate the performance, right? So CPU will not be taking care of the whole processes now, right? It's like, okay, I see the send packet of this particular traffic. Let me check the send. If it seems very relevant, if it seems very, very clean, right? I sort of create a session ID out of it and then offload all those particular traffic to these modules, and they're going to take care of the rest of the things, at least for that particular SYN packet, or at least for that particular session entry, right? This is going to get more detailed with time, right? There's a very detailed topic for this. We might discuss that in future. So when I'm talking about the hardware acceleration, I'm bringing in some more modules now to accelerate the hardware here. And from talking from the FortiGate point of view, we got two of them, right? In general, we call them SPUs, which is security processing units, right? And they can be either NP or they can be either CP. So if there is an IC, right? By the way, I just told you that these are called dedicated integrated circuits, or you call them dedicated ICs, or you call them ASICs. These are application specific integrated circuits, right? So we got two types of them. The first one is NP and the other one is CP, right? When I say NP, NP means network processing modules or units. And when I say CP, it means content processing units or modules, right? I could have just written CPU, but I don't want you guys to confuse it with the main CPU. So this is the whole point. So when I'm talking about the hardwares, the boxes, right? The best thing that is about the hardwares when you're basically trying to bring in the or order a new firewall for your office, the best thing talking from the sales perspective is that hardwares will always have the hardware acceleration present, right? You'll always get the ASICs inbuilt in them, which are actually going to offload CPU of the burden, and then your performance comparatively will be better. But does that mean the VMs will not be having the complete functionality? Because when I'm saying talking about the VMs, what is a VM?
Virtual machine.
It's a virtual machine, right? It's basically an OS. So if I have let's say that I have ESXi over here, right, on which I'm basically running FortiGate firewall. So it will be FortiOS, right? And just to give you the idea, right? When you talk about the Cisco, or let's talk about the Palo Alto. Palo Alto. What is the underlying OS for that? It's Linux.
PenOS.
Correct, yeah. The underlying will be Linux, and on top of it, you run the PanOS, right? And if you talk about the Cisco, it's again Linux, and on top of it, what is it? It's running, yeah, iOS, right?
Mhm.
Likewise, when you talk about the FortiGate, it's Linux, right? And on top of it, it's what?
FortiOS.
It's FortiOS. Yeah. Similarly, if you talk about some other brands, right? One of the famous brands, if I talk about the Apple phones, it is Linux. On top of it, it's running iOS. This is important. Yeah. So it's a small lowercase I, by the way, and this is uppercase I. This is important. So if I have a Linux here, it's a Linux server, right? On top of it, I'm basically running FortiOS, right? Now, since this is the operating system only, it's just a program, right? No hardware here. There will not be any hardware acceleration over here, right? So it is CPU intensive. Everything that is being taken care by, everything that needs to be taken care is only being taken care by the CPU, because you don't get the hardwares imbued them within the box and then sort of provide the complete functionality, and you say that okay, now CPU doesn't have to take care, won't have to take care of each and everything, right?
Right.
So this is a very fine line between the hardwares and the VMs. And by the way, this would be true for the other firewalls as well. It's not just the FortiGate. It's a very general difference that actually falls or that we sort of try to create when we talk about the hardwares and VMs. And again, hardware, you have the good functionality. VMs, you don't have the hardware acceleration, but it's always based on the requirement where you can sort of say that, okay, I can put a VM here and I can put a hardware here, right? You will still see people using VMs in the networks, right? And it always depends on, it's more like a trade-off, right? If I have a very small office and I'd sort of say that, okay, not too many sessions, not too many users, not too much traffic, then let's go with the VM, right? But you have very high range VMs as well, right? If you sort of say that, okay, I cannot, uh, I don't want to get a box and sort of make myself busy or get a liability of housekeeping, right? So at that time, what I want to do is if I have a running or I have a superior ESXi for which I'm already paying some vendor, right? I had taken ESXi on rent, or I have my own server for which I'm paying, right? Or I sort of have bought one ESXi and its own premises. I can utilize that one, right? And then run VM on that, run for firewall on that, right? So it depends on the requirement, depends on the use case. And every time you have a use case, you can try to fit in whether you should get the hardware or you should get the VM, right? So again, one more instance, one more example. Uh, if I have a very good budget and I also have an ESXi running on premises, but that ESXi is already occupied. There are a lot of servers running on that, a lot of VMs running on that. At that time, I say that, okay, I don't have a budget constraint. I can just go ahead and I say that I can get a hardware, right? Let me go ahead with the hardware. And that being said, you can all that being said, you can also say that uh, I got to handle too many sessions now. I have a very high traffic or in this office, so maybe VM might not fit in here. Or even if I'm going with VM, I might need to take a very high range VM, which is costly than the uh, hardware, which provides the same features, right? So at that time, I can just I say that, okay, let me go with the hardware. Now the other scenario becomes when I have ESXi running. I could be either uh, I might have taken ESXi on rent, right? I say that I can run VM on that if I'm already paying for it, provided you have a space to run the VM on that ESXi, right? Or if you say that, okay, I sort of don't want to uh, get busy with the housekeeping or maintenance, at that time, what you can do is you can sort of go ahead with the VM. So depending on the use case, it always uh, I mean, you can sort of negotiate this based on your requirement. It's sort of a trade-off where you can go ahead with the hardware and you can go ahead with the VM, right? So these two things
Hello.
uh, are really important from sales perspective. Now, coming to the NP and CP again, I said that hardware would always contain SPUs and you have
Hello.
NP and you have, yeah.
Just a second, Nasir.
Hmm.
So, in virtual machines, can we enable the hardware acceleration?
No, we cannot because there is no hardware, right?
No, actually, the thing is on the VM, for example, where like hosting the virtual machine on a, I mean, on any hardware, because like let's say we are hosting the virtual machine on an ESXi, and ESXi is also hosted on any machine. Or let's take an example of VMware. So I
Mm-hmm.
think if the hardware is like uh, if the hardware supports the like acceleration, then we can enable it. Let's say
Yeah.
I have hosted the VMware on my machine. If my machine is like supporting the hardware acceleration, then virtual machine should also support that.
Yeah, I'll just try to explain this.
Okay.
Uh, let me come back here. See, when I'm saying the hardware acceleration, I'm basically talking from the FortiGate point of view, right? It's a program here, it's an operating system, right? Which is running on a bare metal ASXi, right? Which is hosted somewhere and on, I mean, it always would boil down to the hardware only, no doubt, right? But FortiGate here itself is software only, right? So having NP and CP within the FortiGate is not possible here because you just have an operating system, you just have a software actually, right? But if you're talking about the hardware acceleration of this particular unit, right, where you have more modules which are taking care of, because this also has CPUs, right? ESXi is a server. It could be Linux based, Windows based, right? It also has CPUs. It also has memory. It also has input output. It also has the hard disk or SSD, right? If you're talking about the hardware acceleration of this unit, yes, you can always go ahead and incorporate more and more independent units, which can eventually help you with the CPU processing, offloading the processes from the CPU so that uh, the performance gets better. But that would be for the hardware acceleration of this unit and not the FortiGate. It might eventually make your FortiGate faster. But again, since we have not incorporated NP and CP, we're not able to do that because this is just a software. It's an operating system only, not a hardware. Because these are dedicated ICs, physical ICs, right? Dedicated ICs or ASICs, right? You cannot sort of uh, put the IC uh, in your program, right? So from FortiGate point of view, the hardware acceleration is not possible. From ESXi point of view, or the server which is actually hosting this particular OS, this VM, this software, the hardware acceleration is possible. And that's the reason I was saying that hardware acceleration is a very general term. It will make sense for the other firewalls, for the other servers. Does that answer your question?
Okay, that means like you are saying that if we enable the hardware acceleration on ESXi and if we are hosting any other any other VM, maybe it might be supporting for that, but it's not supporting for the FortiGate especially.
Yeah, because 48 is just an operating system. I mean, when we are talking about the VMs, it is an operating system only, right?
No, I got that. Let's say I'm hosting any other like some other operating system on that. Are there any chance that it will support the hardware acceleration on that time?
See, again, it falls back on the same question. So
But still,
hardware acceleration from the server point of view, yes. Hardware acceleration for this particular unit might not make sense. I mean, keeping FortiGate as a frame of reference and then saying that hardware acceleration is playing a key role there is not possible because acceleration means getting hardware which is going to accelerate your CPU because it's offloading some of the processes, some of the sessions from your CPU so that your CPU doesn't have to process all of them.
okay, good, thank you.
Yeah. Again, that being said, if you are enabling hardware acceleration on this unit, right, it can eventually help to boost your performance, right, to boost the CPUs or boost the CPU performance, and eventually the performance of this VM might get faster, right? That is the whole crux. Now, this was the discussion of hardware acceleration. Now, coming to the NP and any further questions before I move ahead?
No, I guess.
All right. So talking from NP and CP, right? This is network processing unit and this is content processing unit, right? The latest one is NP7. I mean, it's a physical device, physical unit, it's a physical hardware. This is content processing. The latest one is CP9, right? And this one would be taking care of your networking, right? And this one will be taking care of your content inspection, right? What does that mean? It means once the CPU has processed any of the packet, right? It generates the session ID, and rest of the networking for that session ID will be taken care by NP7, right? Likewise, any of the traffic that was inspected by CPU generates a session ID out of it, right? And then offloads that to the CP9. So the rest of the content inspection, at least for that session ID, will be taken care by the CP9 only. Now here's the thing. For how long this is actually going to last? There are conditions which would meet, right? And once these conditions would meet, this NP7 or the CP9 would say that, okay, there's something that just happened with you being a session. I know I was told to take care of your networking or content inspection, but something just happened with you. So you go back to your CPU for the uh, for the first check again, right? So all those conditions we're going to see in future. For now, this is the whole crux. And when we're going to discuss that, we will discuss what does fast path and slow path basically mean. For now, it's on hold, but yeah, just to keep you guys connected, we'll discuss what's the purpose of this discussion basically, because I would need this discussion at that time. So it's better that I keep you guys aware of this at this moment only. So let's move forward now. Let me go back to what I have in the agenda. All right, FortiGate VM's hardware, concept of hardware acceleration, SPU, NP9, CP9 is done. Let's talk about the initial configuration now. Where am I? All right, let me close this lab over here. By the way, this is my AU. I would say this is, try to make it a little bigger. Okay, I say this is session 2. I would save it. And now I'm going to bring a node. This is FortiGate, the one that I like, for which I don't have to do any sign up process, is this one. I keep it here, and then I'm going to connect a switch. I say IOL. This one will be fine, and then I call it switch. Port groups 1, keep it 2. Oh, we change the icon for this. Okay, this one looks good. So this is the switch. This is FortiGate, and then a very basic topology that we are actually going to design. A one Linux machine here. Doesn't have to be an Ubuntu server. It should be this one. I'm going to save it. And now I connect these two. And then I connect this with the FortiGate. And then I come here, and what I would say is, okay, I need to give it internet. This is a network. This is management cloud. I hope you guys have already gone through the lab setup. I'll keep it as, oh, let me get rid of this link. I'll keep it port 1. And why did I keep it port 1? I will explain that one as well. So let it be the port 2. So for the IP addressing, what I would say is I would say that this Linux machine, which is sort of a PC running in the office, I would say my IP is 10.30.30.10/24, right? And there are other machines as well, and the one that I basically belong to, I mean the network that I basically belong to here would be VLAN. Refresh this. I'll call it VLAN 30. I'm part of the VLAN 30, and I'm assuming that there are other people connected with this switch as well. But yeah, for me, the only PC visible is this particular one, right? So there's a VLAN 30, and then I have a FortiGate over here, uh, which has an SVI or the interface configured as 10.30.30.1 would be fine. And it would be SVI, sort of a router on a stick model, SVI VLAN, or I would just try to keep it simple to not make you guys confused, because then there are other things that I need to explain. Let's say that port 2 has the IP address, which generally is not the case because people prefer to do the ether channels, but let's try to keep it simple. I say that port 2 has this IP address, and then the network that I would have over here is it's 192.168.85.0/24, or it's, I guess, 129/24. All right, so assuming again that there is one machine, it's trying to go to the internet, right? Now, coming back, what would happen if you are basically doing the initial configuration of the FortiGates, right? You have got a box, right? Or somebody just, let me come back here. You're ordering, you have a very fine office over here. This is your office, and you're sort of ordering an FortiGate firewall, right? So eventually this will be shipped from somewhere. So someone will be just come and he's actually going to hand over this FortiGate firewall to you, right? So he comes, he gives it to you, and you're being told that you have to do the initial configuration of this FortiGate. It's not connected yet, it's not mounted within the rack, right? So what you basically do is you get this firewall, right? This is the firewall, the box. You connect it with your PC, right? Now it's this is a cable, right? I'll try to keep it as practical as possible. So what I'm going to do is, if it's a high-end firewall, then there's a dedicated interface for management. It's called MGMT. And if it's not a high-end firewall, then it's port 1, which will suffice for this purpose, right? So the cable will go to the port 1 or the MGMT of this particular box, right? And this one would be your USB port of your PC. And when you have connected this with your PC, what would happen? You're going to notice that this port 1 already has an IP address in the range 192.168.1.99/24. Again, we're not talking about the VMs. We are talking about the high-end FortiGates or the boxes, right? So cable connected to port 1, it's connected back to the USB, right? The IP address over here is, which is the default, it's already given by Fortinet. It's a factory default setting. 192.168.1.99/24, right? It could be MGMT interface of your firewall. If it's a high range model, by the way, it's written there on that box, or it could be port 1 of that firewall, right? I'm connecting the other end of this Ethernet with the USB of my PC, right? Ping, HTTPS, SSH is already enabled on these ports, right? And not just this, this also would act as DHCP server. That means the port, the network adapter over which I have connected this particular cable will be assigned an IP address from this range, right? This has capability, this port 1 or MGMT has the capability of assigning an IP address to this particular network adapter. So what you do is after that is you just open your Chrome browser, right? And you sort of have to do HTTPS ://192.168.1.99, right? It's a serial connection, so this is straight away going to work. And you're going to see the
Web interface.
GUI of this firewall, right?
Yeah.
Asking for username and credential, username and password. Now, let's come back to the lab now. Let's see what happens here. Again, this is port 1 of this VM, right? I have connected it directly to the internet so that I can access it from my PC, right? And the reason how I am able to access it from my PC is that's already explained in the course that I had given as a prerequisite. But just to give you a little idea, I had this Epic pen. Okay. So this port 1, change the color. This port 1 is connected to this management cloud. Now this management cloud, it's cloud 0 by the way, right? This is the interface of EVNG itself, right? And since IV is actually present on this is IV. This IV is actually hosted on VMware, right? This is the VMware over here. And on top of VMware, I'm running EVNG, right? These two are bridged with each other, right? And then this VMware sits on my PC, right? This is the Windows operating system, right? So these two connections are also bridged, and this is how my machines will be able to go to the internet. It's a very I mean, it's sort of a 10,000 top view. For details, you can watch that video where I have explained the all the bits and bytes of this lab setup. And this whole topology is actually explained there. So this is my machine. This is my PC, which you're actually seeing right now on your screen. I have installed VMware or that, right? This gets installed with the virtual adapters, right? Which are always bridged with my physical adapters of this machine, right? Now, one of the virtual adapters is also bridged with the EVNG, which is running on top of VMware. So that one VM adapter or the virtual adapter is what is management cloud actually doing here, right? So management cloud gets the IP address from that one of the virtual adapters, right? It's able to assign that IP address to this particular port 1, right? And then since it's also bridged with the VMware and VMware being bridged with the Windows OS, right? And which is again bridged with the physical adapter, which actually has the physical adapter, right? It allows me to go to the internet. So this is the whole discussion here. Now, can I remove it? Yes. Let me just close this. So again, what I'm going to do here is now I'll just turn this topology on. I double click on this firewall and it's going to open in the secure CRT. Let me just try to close, or let me just try to keep it as it. So it's starting. This is the serial number of this device, by the way, and it is specific to the hardwares since I'm here in the VM. So that's the reason it says FG and then VM and the rest of the details. So there you go. you're being prompted with the admin password, right? You would say admin and then hit enter. It now asks for the password. Now that I'm setting this device up for the very first time, I don't have any password, so I will hit enter again. Right now, it's basically asking me to put a new password here. For simplicity, I will keep it 123 and hit enter. 123, hit enter again. There you go. Sorry about that. So this is basically the prompt of the CLI of this particular FortiGate, right? Now the question is, I want to access the GUI of this firewall, right? For that, what I will do is I will do diag IP address list, which is actually going to give me the IP addresses of all the interfaces, right? I could see that there is one of the devices, which is, by the way, dev name port one means this interface, right? My management cloud, which is nothing but the virtual adapter of the IVNG, which it got from the VMware, right? It has assigned an IP address of 192.168.85.136 to the port one, right? So I should be able to access this port one or the GUI of this particular firewall using the IP address 192.168.85.136. Can I do that? If I type HTTP 192.168.85.136, there you go. This is the firewall. I say admin and then I say 123. This is your FortiGate firewall, right? So generally what I do is, because it always will have the license issues because this firewall is not licensed, right? It sort of tries to connect with the FortiGuard and tries to retrieve the license, and then FortiGuard says that okay, there's one device trying to fetch the license. It's a VM. It will just sort of throw an expiry, saying that you will have to sign up to get the evaluation license. So I generally say that I'm just trying to get rid or shut the time of this particular machine. So I would do config system NTP, and then if I do show here, it's going to show me the current configuration that is there. So I will say set NTP disable. You don't have to do it on your office firewalls, right? And I will also say set server mode disable. The only reason I'm actually doing here is because I don't want this particular firewall to sort of look for a license out there on the internet and then say that there is no one, and then it sort of doesn't let me do anything with this firewall, because unlicensed firewalls are they cannot be used. And here the one version that I'm basically running here, it has an evaluation license of I guess 15 days. Yeah. So it will run for like 15 days, and then I'll have to, I mean, there are ways of protecting whatever the configuration that we have done here. We're going to see that. But for now, this is how you can basically access the GUI of this firewall. Any questions?
I have a question. Like, if we disable the like NTP,
Yeah.
so usually we have the time like free trial for 15 days, so it will not like able to count the time. That's why we're disabling it, right?
Uh, I mean, it's not going to help you with counting the 15 days, right? It will still be able to count those 15 days, and after 15 days, it will just go into the, I mean, it's going to throw a prompt saying that you won't be able to use this firewall anymore if you do not license it, right? And
Right.
when you say license, it means you need to give them money, right?
Yes.
So there are ways of getting rid of that. There's a permanent trial mode license, which actually comes in the version. So let me come back here.
Evaluation.
So
But
the version that we are basically, yeah, the
my
version that we are
question,
running here is 7.0.5, right? And if you want to get a permanent trial license, permanent evaluation license, right?
yes, we can sign in.
Yeah, that's correct. So from the version 7.2.0, which we are not currently at, you would need to sign up with the Fortinet. It's a basic account that you basically would have to create there, and then uh, your license will not be expired, right? But every time you try to log in the firewall, you'll have to use your credentials. So I find that a little
Yeah,
longer
like
method. So to keep it very simple, that's the reason I did this.
my question was like, how will the NTP disable help us? So I didn't
Yeah,
get that.
so
That's why.
when you disable NTP, it's not able to talk to the FortiGuard and then synchronize the time with it so that FortiGuard comes back and says that, hey man, you're just using an unlicensed firewall, right? 15 days counter is again, you will not be able to stop that with the help of disabling NTP. Yeah, disabling NTP, but uh,
The prompt we will not get it
the
again and again.
communication with the FortiGuard, I mean, your FortiGuard is not actually going to, or Fortinet is not actually going to throw you that particular prompt saying that you first need to log in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that's
then
why disabling the time actually helps.
in simple words, we can say that we are disabling the prompt by using the disabling the NTP, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So this is the GUI of this particular firewall. So currently, if you check that here on the extreme right corner, it says admin, which is basically the current username because I just created. I just logged in using the default admin, which is the root user of this firewall. And when I say root user, it basically means the user which actually has the highest credentials, right? Now coming back to the lab now. So I got 192.168.85.136, the IP now. 136 is the IP here. And if I come to the port 2 now, let me come to the port 2 interfaces. I want to assign this particular port to the IP address now. Again, this is port 2 here. Uh, Giving the brief idea of what port configurations actually contain. The alias is something sort of a common name that you want to give this particular port or a name that will increase the readability of this port. I'll keep it as internal or inside, or maybe let's keep it LAN, right? It's a physical interface. VRFIDs is something that we'll maybe discuss in the future. So again, a very basic definition of VRF is uh, every router has routing domain, right? And again, now the firewall is a full-blown router. It also has a routing domain, right? If you don't create any other routing domain, the one that it will use to route the traffic is always having an will always be having an ID of 0, right? So I want to keep this interface in the same routing domain. I'm not messing up with the routing domains. I don't want to create a different routing domain, right? So I'll keep it as it is. The role of this is LAN, right? And here, if you see the addressing mode, it says manual, DSCP, auto managed by IPAM, one arm sniffer. These two are not important for now. They might come up in future once we are going to discuss the sniffers and all that. Uh, it means you're manually going to put the IP address, and this means you have a DSCP server over there, which is actually going to assign an IP address. And I don't have one because if I come back to the lab, right, port 2 doesn't have any DSCP server here on its end, right? You see a switch over here. I'm not going to configure any DSCP server here. It's a endpoint, it's a host machine. This also will not be acting as a DSCP server. So I come back here. I'm going to keep it manual for that reason. So I will keep it 10.30.30.1/24. Yeah. And then create address object matching subnet. I'll say that, okay, you can create one because I might need that later on to call that in the policy where this one is going to act as a source or destination so that it can go to the internet or someone can go to the internet, right? Secondary IP address is not needed here. By the way, in FortiGate, you can, that is true for the other firewalls as well, by the way. You can configure two IP addresses, one primary and the other one secondary. A very different discussion, right? But yeah, just to let you guys know that a single interface can have two IP addresses, primary and secondary. Now, the second thing is administrative access. What
Just a second.
protocols? Yeah,
Could you please explain this addressing mode again? The
yeah.
DH,
So
especially the DHCP part.
Correct. So by DHCP, it means this particular interface, which we're talking about, is port 2, right? It means you're just making it as a DHCP client. Know what I mean?
Okay.
And when it's actually acting as a DHCP client, what would it do? It's going to look for the DHCP server,
Correct.
right? It's going to broadcast the discover message, right? And then if it's able to find any DHCP server out there, it's going to retrieve the all the DHCP information, right? All the handshake that actually goes in the DHCP.
Correct.
And we don't have one here, right? I didn't configure this, which I'm not going to configure this as a DHCP server, right? And this one is an end host, so this would also be not a DHCP server. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right. So coming here, that's the reason I'm keeping it on manual and assigning this particular IP address, right? And administrative access, it means the protocols that you are enabling on this particular interface, right? I'm enabling HTTPS, right? And when I'm enabling HTTPS, it means this particular interface is acting as HTTPS server. Anyone who is trying to access 10.30.30.1 on HTTPS, this port would be able to respond to him with the HTTPS data, right? Likewise, if someone is trying to ping me, I will be able to respond him with the echo replies. FMG access is not important for now. SSH, if someone is trying to SSH on this particular IP address 10.30.30.1, I would be able to respond him with the shell level access or whatever you call it, right? Or the CLI access, by the way. This is the SNMP, right? If you have an SNMP server out there in the network and you want to sort of monitor this particular firewall on this particular IP address, you would need to allow that protocol on this port too, right? Likewise, FTM, radius accounting, security fabric, speed test is not important for now, right? And then you have receive LLDP. LLDP transmissions and receptions. These are basically used to detect the upstream and downstream devices, right? This port, if you're enabling LLDP over here and you're saying that I want to transmit and receive the LLDPs, what I'm going to do is basically I will send out my LLDP information so that any of the devices over here, if you run the show LLDP neighbor later on that particular device, you would be able to detect this device there. And if you turn it off, right, it means there are no LLDP um, transmissions and receptions possible for this particular port. So no one would be able to detect me, right? So it is important. It finds a use case when you're sort of trying to discover the devices in your network or you have an inventory, right? Where one of the servers is basically discovering the devices with the help of LLDPs, LLDP protocol, right? So that's the whole purpose of this LLDP. Now, if I come scroll down, do you want to make this as a DHCP server, right? If you want this particular port to act as a DHCP server, you can configure the settings here. I say that DHCP stats is enabled. I want to create this as a DHCP server saying that the address range should be 10.30.30.2 to 10.30.30.254. And this is the net mask. This is the default gateway, which is same as interface IP. And what is my interface IP, by the way? It's 10.30.30.1, right? So anyone who is actually going to receive this DHCP information or who will be my DHCP client will have the default gateway configured as 10.30.30.1, right? Likewise, DNS server, which is the DNS server for my FortiGate. We're going to see that as well, how and where you can configure the DNS server on this FortiGate, right? And if you say that I'm going to keep the DNS server exactly as what is configured for this whole FortiGate, then that particular DHCP client will get that DNS server only, right? If I click on advanced, it says mode server type is regular NTP server. You want to specify an NTP server for the DHCP client, you can do that. If you have wireless controls, not important for now. You can decide the time zone for that. Next bootstrap is when that particular device boots up. Uh, it should get a different IP address or a different IP address, a different IP address for the DHCP server. You can configure that one here as well. right? If you want to send the information of TFTP servers to that particular DHCP clients, you can use that. Or if you want to send down some more DHCP options, you can always come here and configure them. By the way, here the value has to be in the hexadecimal, right? Uh, Again, we'll have a separate discussion for the DHCP server when your one of the interfaces in your FortiGate acts as a DHCP server. For now, let's keep it very short. So I have given the IP address over here. I keep it manual and not DHCP. And then I'm also allowing these protocols over here. Now coming down, I'm enabling network detection so that I'm able to detect all the devices on this particular port. Again, it happens with the help of LLDPs only, right? When I turn device detection on this interface on, it means that any device which is connected on port 2, this firewall will be able to detect that with the help of LLDPs on received on this particular port, right? Security mode, outbound shaping profile. Let's not get into that discussion for now. I'll click on OK for now. And let me turn off the DHCP for now. I will not configure this as a DHCP server. I'll try to keep it as simple, right? So there you go. So my port 2 is configured now. I'll come to the switch now. I'll click on enable. I do show NT stats. I'm not touching switch here. I'll leave it as it is. There are some of the scenarios where we're going to manipulate the configuration of the switch as well to make it trunk or allow some particular VLANs or create L2 VLANs. For now, let's keep it as simple. Let me go back to the Linux machine now. By the way, this is an end host. Just assume that this is one of the PCs out there. Now, what I'm going to do here is I want to configure this. Yeah. Guys, any question?
Yeah, I have a question. Hello.
Yeah. Hey. Yes, please go ahead.
And can I say in Kashmiri? Is it fine?
Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
Okay. Yuthe point ke monu na use firewall configure karan that's what's one to DSCP te base one te use tha akto DSCP back use IP per base tha agar misal पर different subnet आसन तेल चेस हमेशा thavan different yum that's rules banayit misal ke तौर पर कहाँ छे sales मस back छे security मस अगर इस आख सकें use तो back उतान चीज है बहुत तेमिस तो ते वना speak ऐसे में वना मगर तो इसमें वो नहीं शायद
ठीक है दिन चुना port 2 is in port 1
port 2 use तो ते uses
Sure, we make one on the manual assigning to DSCP concept.
अगर इसे DHCP था वो आदस ऐसे से IPN पाने ऐसे rules एक DHCP खतर सके सारी implement मगर ये लेस different subnet आसन तेमिस क्या शेष करना ऐसे सारी खतर अलग अलग rules था उनकिन तुम कैसे सारी मस implement
नहीं मेरे को समझ नहीं आया
शायद इमें misconfusion होत पड़े ना policies बनावा
हाँ
अमिश पे मतलब इसने दस पे वहाँ करन address add कमिस users मतलब इमें access it पर जो तम इमें ये तो दस में उसका confusion बाई ना शुन सुकी है इस बदल चीज
या शुरू firewall rule कियन ये चीज वो ना इसमें port 2 ना port 2 मिशन IP address because अगर नहीं मिस IP address आस की ये devices इस तक नहीं पहुंच पाएंगी
बराबर
अच्छा machine मिस IP address वन शी मिस IP address देने ज़ तरीक या तिशु manually दियों या तिशु क्या
DHCP
ना या तिशु DHCP दियों मुझे वना कि अगर भी DHCP तो था ना ये ऑप्शन कि ठीक है
ये कर
तो ये
broadcast
करेगा डोरा
discover message है broadcast कर या इन
discover
पोस्ट किन IP
सोइज
रटे
pati emis offer मगर सो आसा तेली येली kan DHCP server आसवा मा छु मे इतन की तव योस बस सती वन कि ब करन ई switch configure as a DHCP server की otherwise we can do that ठीक है because we don't want to sort of get into the DHCP discussion all the sound
just
वन कि मैं इस IP दूं तो मैं इसको manually IP दे दिया for that reason
okay
all the sound ठीक है तो इसमें इथे बट रुका हुआ and has to be very मतलब कशिर पोइट उर्दू पोइट इत पोइट तक की भाषा पॉइंट से समझूं all the समझ और ये बहुत सिंपल फायरवॉल है मतलब शुन त्युता हुई की हम ठीक से
بیٛاکھ اکھ کتھ ٲس مےٚ وَنٕنۍ زِ
हाँ वन
مےٚ چھِ FortiGate کَرے مےٚ تہِ اِنسٹال VMS مگر مےٚ چھِنہٕ یہِ چلٲنی
मैं क्या उसमें इंस्टॉल करूँ
VMware کَرے تَمے تھرٛوٗ پَتہٕ کَرے مےٚ یِہوٚے FortiGate VPN یہِ کَرے مےٚ firewall اِنسٹال
ठीक
مگر یہِ چھُنہٕ پَتہٕ چلٲنی اگر تُہۍ تَتھ پٮ۪ٹھ تہِ تھوڑا ویٖڈیو بنٲیِو
वो वीडियो बना लिया था उस पे मैंने
Actually, بہٕ چھُس وٕنکٮ۪س تہِ لاگ اِن کمپنی منٛز سُے چھُ مےٚ ریٖزن
तोह शुद्ध मन वीडियो एक्सेस
ایکسس چھِنہٕ مےٚ کِہیٖنۍ
मैं भेज देता हूँ आपको वीडियोस उस पे
इसमें
है
सेम मेरे
वीडियोस
को भी हो रहा है लाइक मैं जैसे लॉगिन करता हूँ NTB में मैं डिसेबल करता हूँ बट स्टिल वो पॉपअप आता है कि लाइसेंस एक्सपायर्ड है
विल फिक्स दैट मतलब वो वीडियो में एक्सप्लेन नहीं किया था क्या मैंने
हाँ आपने बस बताया था कि अगर हम मतलब NTP अगर हम डिसेबल करेंगे तो मतलब ये उसको बाईपास कर देगा लेकिन ऐसा कुछ हो नहीं रहा है
अच्छा व्हाट्स द वर्जन ऑफ योर फायरवॉल
हाँ मैं देख लेता हूँ
ठीक है
अब वो हम एंड में देख लेते हैं फिलहाल हम इस पे
ऑल राइट
कंटिन्यू करते हैं
चलो I'll click on OK now here so I'll come back here I'm not putting any configuration on the switch now I'll keep it as it is and when I say I'm keeping switch as it is it means ki Ethernet 0/1 and Ethernet 0/0 ये दो interfaces right these two interfaces are part of the default VLAN and what's the default VLAN of the switch
One, I guess. Native
VLAN
one.
1 right and when I'm not touching the configuration it means it would be able to send and receive the traffic because there is no segmentation happening within the switch right it's a single VLAN traffic being received from an interface which is part of the VLAN 1 and being sent or what do you call it I'm just trying to make that data exit or make that traffic exit via the interface that is again part of the same VLAN which is VLAN 1 so I don't need to do anything here for now we might do that in future but for now I'm keeping it simple right now coming to the end host this is my PC we'll come here I hope this is the one now so I'm going to assign an IP address right I'm not sure if you guys have already checked this one as well so what I will do is I will configure an IP address 10.30.30.10 net mask I'm going to configure as 255.255.255 dot okay 30.1 is the gateway which is the port 2 it just came on its own and it's fine if it's throwing it on its own I have no problems with that this is the DNS server I'm going to keep it as well 8.8.8.8 I click on OK and then I say connect right now 10.30.30.10 is the IP now let me check if I'm able to ping the gateway 10.30.30.1 so I have connectivity to the gateway right now the question is this is the ingress interface of this firewall and someone from behind is trying to reach out to that firewall and it's happening within the same network right I was part of the VLAN uh, let's call it maybe VLAN 30 right or I'm coming from one subnet which is 10.30.30.10 I'm trying to reach out to 10.30.30.1 right it's the same subnet right it just touches the firewall and goes back and the reason I am able to reply it or I'm able to receive the replies from port 2 is because the ICMP is allowed on this port 2 if I come here and say that let me just try to
Disable it.
close the ping here now and come back here traffic has stopped right I'm not able to see any of the further pings right now if I come here and turn this on now it should work again yeah so there is the thing this is the whole point of security here having administration or allowing set of protocols on a particular interface making sure that nobody touches and just uh, gets my CPU busy in responding to all those pings I can always say that I can control this particular interface from responding to anybody right so this is what is the point behind the administrative access likewise if you talk about the other protocols which are in the admin access. HTTPS, somebody trying to reach out to me at 10.30.30.1, right? /24. This particular port will not be able to respond to it unless and until this is not checked here, right? So is it true for the SSH, right? Now, let me come back here now. All right, so this is the PC. Now what I will do is I'll try to reach out to the internet now. I'll say ping 1.1.1.1. Why is it not going to the internet?
For
Yeah.
that, I need to create a rule.
Yeah, so there is something that's missing on this firewall because again, firewall is an idiot device. If you don't tell it, it won't allow, right? And that is again part of the next session's discussion. So I would see that if I'm coming to the firewall policies, if I just click on the policy and objects, I click on the firewall policy. There's a single policy that says everyone trying to go to every destination, all destinations, schedules always. Schedule means that if there's an particular part of the day where I actually want to allow this particular rule, right, or deny this particular rule, it says always. It means 24/7, right? All services are set to deny. So this is the implicit rule. It always has an policy ID, which is the identifier of this particular policy.
This rule is by default, right?
Yeah, it's by default. We don't create it. We didn't create any firewall rule yet, right?
Okay.
And for this reason, we say that firewall won't allow. I mean, it's a full-blown router, but unlike router, it won't allow everything coming from one of the interface and going to the other interface, right? Now there is a discussion, why did it allow this communication, touching this particular port, and then this was also getting the replies, right? If I come here, I'm trying to reach out to port 2, I'm receiving the replies, right? So port 2 traffic, for some reason, since it's just touching the firewall and coming back, and I have the ICMP enabled on this port 2, for that reason it's allowing it, but there's a very general discussion that we have coming in the future sessions, how we can control this one as well, right? For now, I'll try to keep it simple. So this is the whole point. Tomorrow we're going to discuss some more things. Let's not try to get into too many details. So we had discussed concept of VMs and hardwares, concept of hardware acceleration, SPU, concept of initial configuration, IP address management, port 1 DHCP server. Again, DHCP server is something that I'll take separately. I'll keep it as to be discussed, right? And then these things. So we're going to discuss all those things in our upcoming session, and also we'll see how we can pass this traffic through this firewall now, right? Any questions, guys? No questions? All right. I'll share that playlist with you guys. So again, for the firewall version, which is beyond 7.2.0, you would need to create an account on Fortinet to make that work. And for the firewall versions which are below that particular version, like 7.0.3 or 7.0.10, NTP is something that's actually going to work. We can stop the recording now, Raju, if you're still there.